What is going on, Macro Perspective peeps? Man, I'm super excited for this episode today. In a partnership and a collaboration with Longevity AI, we are doing some what you call backdoor episodes to kind of create their own platform of content and things like this. And what we really wanted to do is bring in some special guests from the team themselves. Today we have Lior Roitman on the team. And guys, Lior is a PhD in biology, biological sciences. He loves the sciences. He got that from the Weizmann Institute of Science. He just defended his PhD at the Dana-Farber Institute in Boston, Massachusetts, and has a plethora of knowledge when it comes to longevity, where the longevity data is going, and things around the science. And he really wants to just practice some of the best science there is. So today, what we're going to talk about with Lior is highlighting just his journey. And then from there, part of it being in that longevity AI, and then kind of going into like what is around the curve for the next iteration of what longevity looks like, since it's such a hot topic. But Lior, thank you so much for being here today, man. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm really looking forward for this talk.
Perfect. Well, just to start off, Lior, real quick, why longevity? Why science? Like, why longevity science for you? Like, what was that curiosity thing for you? What piqued your interest to be like, I got to do this?
So I'll be honest, and some people think that we should live forever. I don't. I'm perfectly fine with dying. I think we should dying. It's a natural process, dying, some things just needs to cease and desist. But I do believe that whatever lifespan that we do have, we need to live in like respectfully, and just having the best life that we can have. And so the reason why I approach is because I want to be able to live up to 100, but in a 50 years old body, being fit, being able to do whatever I want, whatever I love. And so this really piqued me. I really wanted to understand what is happening during our aging, that kind of makes our body works differently, and what affects us to bring us to that actual situation. Like, can we prevent it from ever happening, being able to live our life respectfully throughout our entire lifetime. So this is really what piqued my interest, those kind of actual biological mechanisms that push us towards aging.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting how this has become like such a hot topic in, well, probably since COVID, realistically, right? Watch, now we're banned from YouTube, Seamus. It's okay. We got other platforms though. But I think like the fascination with this, like you just said, it's like I would rather have like the quality in my years versus necessarily like the length. Like I want to be able to not have fragility. I want to have the strength and the ability to do all the things that I enjoy. But then some people are really caught up on this idea of kind of, quote, living forever. And like you said, it's kind of Father's time is undefeated. No one lives forever, but understanding that like one of those big events, whether it's cardiovascular risk, whether it is, that type of event that's related to that, whether it's metabolic disease, whether it's like all these other additional kind of risk factors that are there, I think like not turning a blind eye to those things, or potentially knowing what percentile you rank in a sense, or whatever that percentile risk is super important, and definitely something I think that you probably can talk better on than myself, be able to like understand like the key markers that people should be looking at, and then how all those probably relate.
So yeah, definitely, I completely agree. And I think, just the realization, the understanding that we can actually do it, right? This is kind of somewhat of a new but old concept, right? So like one of the things that engaged me and I want to talk about is like this quite of an old research, and I know Guy kind of mentioned it on his show, so shout out to Guy, our CEO, but he kind of mentioned something called like Birmingham Score, right? So, this is, those who work with cardiovascular diseases are well familiar with the Birmingham Score. Birmingham Score is a score of prediction for cardiovascular disease development within 10 years from whatever your current age is. And it kind of gives you percentage of what are the chances for you to develop this disease, which if you kind of think about it is amazing. Knowingly you can now know what are your percentage, like with your current status, with your current blood measurements and like physiological testing, you can actually predict the future, right? And so how do they even came to this conclusion? It's basically they've done this like really long study. They've chosen this really small town of Framingham, and the only reason why they chose it, they actually they had this big grant in like some of the hospitals in Boston, and they chose, like they were looking for small towns surrounding Boston because most of the big hospitals are in Boston. It's like you have the big universities, Ivy Leagues as well. And they came to Birmingham because it's a small population that hardly changed. There was very little trafficking within it, right? And I think it was started at 48, in 1948, and they actually started measuring the population, 5,000 people, so that all it took, right? And they measured it every roughly 3 to 5 years, right? And they just do a whole physical and a whole blood test, and every 3 to 5 years. And then after 30 years, they decided to continue. So now they have the spouses of the population or whatever, significant others and their kids and so on. They continued another wave and another wave. And till this day, they're still trafficking, still measuring, having their physical taken. And I think what amazingly is we can actually predict the trends now. We can understand what are the measurements that are important to predict the development of chronic diseases. And on the other side, you can now try to start and understand how can you treat it, how can you even prevent it, what measurement should you change over time to kind of prevent this disease from ever happening. But we need to remember, right? One of the problems was that this population was very narrow, right? There were high percentage of smokers, many Caucasians, as I said, very little trafficking. So the prediction was very specific, one type of population, right? And it wasn't for the broad audience. So one of the things that we are currently working on is the understanding of, okay, each of us are individual on its own, right? And the usage of this broad population prediction tools is amazing to me, right? But it's clearly not enough anymore, right? We want to understand at the level of the individual, each person on its own, what are the predicaments and how will he respond to different interventions that kind of maybe help him or just prevent his development of the disease.
Yeah, and obviously you said up there that population size, right, was very specific, and then being able to then kind of go from there and apply it to more the specific individual. I'm assuming that's kind of where you guys step in, right? That's kind of where longevity AI is kind of being hey, we can take these data sets from multiple different ones and then kind of look how it would then be analyzed for the individual. How does that process kind of break down? How does it work? Is that what you focus on in part of your study and research, or what?
Definitely. I want to, definitely. I want to give an example, right? So there was a paper that was recently published. It was done on mice. Additional papers are currently, I know that different works have been held on humans as well. And they wanted to test different diets, the effect of different diets on aging, right? And I think one of the main diets that people are familiar now is we have the intermittent fasting, right? Is one of the most famous diets that currently people are using, or calorie restriction, for instance. And there was a lot of association between calorie restriction and longevity, which is known in mice. It was able to elongate their lifetime and lifespan and health span, by the way, by roughly 30%. So who wouldn't want to live up to 120, right? It's amazing, and live healthy and everything, right? Yeah. Sounds amazing. It's a small, you just have to eat less, which is, some people would say it's a lot, so.
In this day and age, in this day and age, actually, in this day and age, that might be doable with the GLPs.
Yeah, I know. It's exactly. So basically, right, and it's great. So it's a miracle, right? Just eat less and you live longer. It sounds amazing, right? But then if you actually look at the individual level, you'll see that the distribution of mice that lived above average, and you can see the distribution was huge, meaning that there was a large population of mice that was going through calorie restriction, but still lived less than the average of the normal population that had a normal calorie intake. Yeah. So, one of the things that they kind of done the analysis is what was the difference in markers. So they actually tested the markers before they started the diets. So it wasn't as an effect of the diets, and they saw that those populations have a distinct set of markers, and you can actually know beforehand which mice will more benefit from this specific diet, which I think this is exactly what we're looking for, right? So we want to know, okay, we want to tell you, do a certain intervention, we're going to give you a certain treatment in order to prevent the development of the disease. It would probably work differently on different individuals. So we want to be able to know exactly what are the set of markers that kind of will foretell us, okay, this individual will benefit from walking. But on the other hand, it might won't benefit. Other individuals will not benefit the same way, And I think there's a lot of research understanding of personal medicine, and kind of try to understand what exactly are the biomarkers that will allow us to predict the best treatment for that individual. So a
Yeah.
lot of the focus in currently what we're trying to do is exactly looking at this. Try to
Yeah.
have this best set of biomarkers for prediction, but also a set of biomarkers to understand what will be the best intervention to kind of
Yeah.
help you
Yeah.
prevent
I
it.
mean, I really appreciate you bringing on that fasting and calorie restricted diet. I think that gets a lot of, especially lately. Walter Longo came out with like another book. There was a book he came out with 7 years ago, and he came out with another book like 2 to 3 months ago. I don't know what the book was, but it was about fasting, and like he has this company called Prolon and different things. But there is some data primarily with mice around that fasting and how it helps. But when it comes to the individual, this is the thing that Marcos and I talk about, right? Is protein becomes this big marker against fasting, right? You can still fast, but it's hard to get in a lot of protein, right, Marcos? And it's like it becomes a second job. So it becomes this idea of a tailored approach, really looking at those markers from that person and going, okay, hey, you're right. Like what you said, Lior, fasting may not be good for you, or fasting may be good for you for your longevity, for your health span. We have to figure this out, and it's a delicate balance, Yeah, so it's a bit like that. But I think, talking about those markers that we're talking about, I think there's Longevity AI has this book about you, by the way, which we'll get into more later on and stuff like that. But there are like 12 key markers. I don't think we need to get into all of them, but
Could we list them first?
let me pull up real quick the book about you, because I have one of myself. So give me 1 second, and I'm gonna pull it up right here. I'll list it out that way. It just makes sense. It's right in the intro, and I love this intro, by the way, Lior. The way Longevity AI has created that book about you, where it cohorts all the information about you. But I'm going to give you the 12, and maybe Marcos, you could just
one additional thing to kind of put in there and preface is that as Longevity AI analyzes information, right, like biometrics and biomarkers, so like physical traits and then also blood work, right? It's just for people that don't know. It then gives you literally a physical book, right, Seamus? I don't think people really know what the product is, so to speak. So
just to break it down. I appreciate that. So I'm going to share this, but just to not put it on screen, but I will give it, and not necessarily the biomarkers, but more of the hallmarks of aging, right, Lior? And I'm going to start from the top. Is 1, deregulated nutrient sensing. Okay, deregulated nutrient sensing. Mitochondrial dysfunction, number 2. Cellular senescence. 4, dysbiosis, right? 5, disabled macroautophagy. 6 is going to be chronic inflammation, right? Inflammation, good in acute phases if you need to deal with it, but chronically.
By the way, it's also known as inflammaging, right? So we know exactly. I mean, when we get older, you get an increase of inflammation throughout your body.
Yeah, and then 7, altered intercellular communication. 8, stem cell exhaustion. That's a good one, dang. 9, genomic instability. 10, telomere attrition. 11, epigenetic alteration. So for you guys out there, there's genetics, epigenetics. Epi is over genetics, so it's like anything that affects your genetics from your environment behavior. And then lastly is going to be loss of proteostasis. That is quite a lot. Marcos, you want to dense? Yeah, it's pretty dense, but let's not go into all of them. But Marcos, what piqued your ear a little bit here? Maybe New York can go into, or I don't know.
And I wanted a list to be there, so if people wanted to grab the transcript and or like they get to that section in the episode where they can go in and maybe look at more of those things, because we can't cover them all. Shoot, which ones are you most fascinated in, Lior?
So, I mean, I've done my PhD on cellular senescence, right?
Ooh.
I think, and actually, I think it's a fascinating field, right? The entire concept of cellular senescence, and it's like recently I think it really peaked in the recent years. Because
can you break it down for us? Can you define it?
So some people also. It's also known as zombie cells, and I'll try to kind of explain it in the simplest way. But basically, through our lifetime, we have DNA damage, right? I mean, when I asked you guys about, like, for instance, what is the first thing? I mean, some of the first things that comes to mind when I talk about, for instance, on cancer, right? So you probably know about chemotherapy and stuff like this, but one of the first things that comes to mind is mutations, right? And that's kind of makes sense, right? So we have DNA sequence, and we, from whatever reasons, some mutagens, like some food that we eat which is not good for us, or like just exposure to sunlight, we can gain mutation in our DNA. Okay, and most mutations that we gain throughout our lifetime will have zero effect on our cells. You won't even notice it. You currently, each one of us probably has like million mutations within our DNA, and we're not even aware of it. Like, we're just living our life and it's perfectly fine. But some mutations might be of high risk, especially when they kind of hit the specific marks, just like specific locations. And so we have, our body has went through like thousands of years of evolution, and he can deal with those mutations. We have mechanisms to deal with those mutations, okay? And for instance, so when we have high levels of DNA damage for whatever reasons, our cells can recognize the damage, aware of the fact that they are damaged, and they will commit suicide, like kind of an altruistic act. They literally will kill themselves for the body, so they won't develop into cancer cells, right? Because this is what we want to prevent. So they have the system. We have an inert system that kind of prevents cancer from ever developing, which is amazing to me. We developed it throughout the years. So this is one reason, right? We have high levels of DNA damage will probably push the cells towards something that is termed apoptosis, right? Which is cellular death. And then we have lower level of DNA, quite lower levels of DNA damage, and we have mechanisms in our body that can repair the DNA. So this is another aspect. And then you can kind of have like an intermediate level where the damage is high and you cannot repair it, but on the other hand, you kind of want to have the tissue intact. You don't want to have a massive loss of cells, and this is what we term cellular senescence. Right? And those cells are familiar with the fact that they are damaged. They are not cancerous to anything. They stop their proliferation, so they don't kind of pass those mutations to the next generation of cells, and they kind of flag to the immune cells to kind of come and eliminate them. Right? They have this interaction, which is amazing. And when we are young and we have like a very good immune system, they will flag the immune system. The immune system will come and kind of remove them. But throughout our lifetime, we have decrease in our effectiveness of the immune system. On the other hand, you have an increase in the gaining of mutations, right? Along the time, there's like, just by random chance, you can gain more mutation and more exposure to sunlight, more exposure to different mutagens, and you have an kind of increase in the amount of cells that are becoming senescent, this mechanism. And they keep on secreting these small attractants to kind of attract immune cells to them and kind of causing inflammation. And throughout the lifetime, they kind of increase the inflammation over time. They affect their surrounding cells. They cause more tissue fibrosis, more tissue scarring, more inflammation throughout the body, which is very determinist. Like, it can cause cancer, it can cause other like chronic diseases, and it's been shown throughout the body. So just by eliminate those senescent cells, you can not only expand your lifespan, but also your life health. Like, literally, the mice live better, they have better coat, or they have more hair, so it affects so many parameters, which is amazing to me. And I can tell you out of my research that it also affects the behavior amazingly. So we have like behavioral tests. So for mice, for instance, so we can tell like how young mice can kind of act and kind of old mice. And I've done it with my own hands. When I took senescent cells, like cells from old mice, and inject them into young mice, they started acting like old mice. Which is crazy to me. And on the other hand, when you kind of eliminate those cells in old mice, they start acting like young mice, like literally acting like, behavioral. They're becoming more aware of their surroundings. They kind of move more. They kind of explore more, we have this tendency. We do the same thing, right? As we grow older, we have this tendency to become more rigid. We have the tendency to less try new stuff. We like our own kind of surroundings. We are not open to new stuff. Exactly the same thing with mice, and you can actually see the effect. When you take young mice, like 2 months old mice, you inject them with old cells and they will act like old, exactly like 3 years old mice, which is the like exactly like 80 years old individuals, which in my opinion is crazy. So we now understand the effect of senescent cells is like a whole body system effect. And people are trying to kind of decipher exactly how this affects. And on the other hand, there's a huge now cohorts of experiments trying to see the effect of elimination of senescent cells in humans. And there's like drugs that are kind of people are trying to develop new drugs to eliminate senescent cells. The whole companies that come arose on that field of senescent cells.
That's wild. I just see a science fiction novel of people just taking younger people's senescent cells and just trying to live. like young folks, right, Marcos? That's just in my head.
I feel like that's one of the what is it? Isn't that part of like Rapunzel's hair, right? Like it's because it has like the secret trait of like the fountain of youth because it had like the quote unquote senescent cells that kept the mother like young even though she was like 200 years old. um, but I mean just thinking of like what it brought to my mind because I feel like the idea behind that does feel very like sci-fi-ish in the sense that kind of know these things exist but then to actually extract them and then put them into another body like you just did with the mice and then to kind of see them exhibiting behaviors is very fascinating. So then like aside from taking out young or old cells and then bringing them in that form, what would people do to help with like cleaning up senescent cells then? That's like where my mind goes of like, what do you do if you don't have access to something like that?
So, and I think it's, first of all, I think prevention is always, right? If there's one thing that I always recommend is prevention. Don't get to this point to begin with, right? So if you can, it's even with small stuff, like if you can wear sunscreen, for instance, when you go out and expose yourself to sun. Don't eat certain foods which have higher amounts of carcinogens, right? I mean, and we know that like the World Health Organization kind of publish from time to time like certain foods are not as healthy as others, and we can kind of not expose ourselves to this to begin with. So this is one aspect. You know, on the other hand, there are certain foods that have a higher percentage of certain materials that kind of cause, they're termed as senolytics, basically elimination of senescent cells. And it's quite interesting. For instance, strawberries are known to have high, so great reason to eat strawberries, you know, eat strawberries to kind of prevent aging, you know, just a great reason. And there are multiple other foods that are kind of have high percentage of these materials. So this is another way to kind of, and these days there are currently drugs which are under testing. So I don't want to recommend anything, but you can definitely go out there and explore the field. It's called Senolytics, basically drugs that eliminate senescent cells. And I think there's a lot of them out there. I'm waiting for, you know, final results of different like different experiments that kind of being held, like cohorts that are being held right now, and then, you know, we'll know better if it's how recommended it is for humans, because a lot of the research has been done on mice and not a lot is known how senescent cells are actually, I mean, we know that they are out there and we know that humans have them. We're not sure like how exactly do they affect humans. And so right now they have, and I think recently because the NIH kind of set aging as a disease, which was a really big step, you know. I mean, they kind of defined aging as a disease. Until recent years, people are just, you know, of aging was just being held, but it wasn't defined as one, right? And so they set cancer as a disease, they set obesity as a disease, but in recent years they've decided to kind of set aging as a disease. And once you set it as a disease, you can now start to kind of explore it as a disease and explore drugs for aging and so on and so forth. So now there's a massive amount of cohorts that are running to kind of test exactly those kind of drugs, like senolytic drugs, and how can they prevent aging, which I think will bring us a lot of better understanding on how can we approach this kind of subject.
That's pretty cool. Like aging independent of other factors as disease, and then we will attack that.
I wonder here too. So like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm very skeptical on these like phenotyping ages or you know these other like biological ages versus chronological age. But then my mind kind of goes to 2 7-year-olds never really look alike. So there has to be something to that. And then for someone to like look like they're 20 years younger, perhaps there is maybe more validity than meets the eye with these things. But I wonder how much the people I would put, this would be a great study, by the way. I feel like you have a room of people and you tell them, guess these people's ages, except they're all the same age. It's like one of those ones, you know, like I remember being on my college campus and this kid was running an experiment and everything was flavored the same. They just had different dyes in it. So that all looked different. He's like, what flavor is that? And I was like, it tastes like a fruit punch. And I was like, at the end of it, he's like, yeah, none of them were a different flavor. They were all just different colors. I was like, no shit. So something along those lines. And then from there, do we actually have the ability to kind of like notice someone that's biologically aging slower, just purely based on like that visual representation you're seeing of like a 60-year-old person? I would be fascinated.
First of all, there are ways. So there is a thing called skin age. So even our skin kind of represents our pace of aging, and we can test it and we can measure it. Other than that, I can tell you there are some tests that, like features, like different features of aging, and there are tests currently today that are being held that kind of test it. And additionally, so one of the things that you kind of mentioned, like the thing with the flavor, is a lot of placebo, but there is a psychological aspect of aging. One of the most known tests about aging is you are being asked, how old do you feel? And it's amazingly, people that age faster will assess like being older than they actually are. Like usually they'll say like, I'm much older, comparing to people that actually age slower, which give themselves like a lower estimation. They'll mention that like, I feel much younger, which is crazy to me, like how everything is kind of correlated, how like body and mind, everything is connected to one, and you can actually manifest it, just like literally manifesting it.
That's so funny. And so I've done my book about you from Longevity AI. I put everything about me in there, my genetics, my gut tests, my labs, my recent labs, to all the way to my decks, everything about me and my health. And it said I was 21. The funny thing was, I got that book about me like around my 31st birthday. And the first thing I said when I turned 31, I told Marcos, I was like, I feel 21 though. and it confirmed it for me in my markers from health markers and all that. And it's funny that you say that, because I think the psychology of aging is pretty important too. If you're feeling a certain way, you're gonna act that way, right? And the body and mind, it is one, right? We have this dualistic mindset, but it is one where if you're gonna say that thing, it's probably gonna be a prophecy to fulfill itself. Like, I feel old. Yeah, you will. It's that age-old adage of like, Henry Ford says, if you think you can and you can't, you're right.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot of matter of decision as well, right? I mean, you kind of have to decide, okay, this is something that I'm aware of, and it's within my surroundings. And when you set it in motion, it's like I'll do active stuff that kind of allows me to prevent it. And so this is part of what we're acting upon, right? I mean, we have the scientific side, which is kind of packed with like the actual test and everything, but you have the behavioral side. How can you get an individual to actually act? How can you actually give him exactly whatever he needs and kind of, tailor it just for him so he will actually achieve it? So I think one of the main problems in the field, and we kind of had a talk with a lot of doctors. We had a talk with he was the head of the neuro department in one of the biggest hospitals here. We kind of asked them like, what can we do to help you? Like we want to give you whatever we can do. What will benefit you the most? Like, what are the best tools that we can give you that you can work with your patient? Because this is partially what we do. We kind of we run our test, and we kind of have this amazing dashboard that allows the physician to achieve achieve their best work, help their patients the best way they can. And so we constantly approach like physician and kind of ask them, what is the best thing that we can do for you, right? I mean, how can we give you the best analysis, the best data, the best everything that you need to do your work in the best
and represented visually, easily, and the back end system being easy to access, not tedious like a bunch of other electronic health records and things like this. Yeah,
exactly. Representation wise, science wise, if we need to do certain calculations, if they wanted to represent it in a certain way, everything that they can do the best work in the most efficient way. And so we asked them, and he mentioned, one of the main problems is, and I think it's kind of amazing, because this guy, he really was like the head of the department, professor in the highest of levels, and people kind of wait like 6 months at the time to meet him. They pay a lot of money to kind of see him. Yeah. He said most of the problem is most of the people that he actually get to meet, like he gives them a set of requirements, things that they need to do in order to help themselves. And he said that most people probably most likely will not do anything of the stuff that he actually give them by the next appointment. Or if anything, they'll do it like 2 weeks before the appointment, or just before the appointment, just kind of to market, to kind of check it out, kind of says that. So one of the main things that we kind of focus, other than doing the scientific side, is on the behavioral side. Like how can we approach people and kind of give them exactly what they need, and it's like exactly like tailor-made to their own benefit, and hopefully this will push them to actually do whatever they need to do. Because I think in this kind of field is one of the main problems, not only the science itself, because the science that we're doing is solid, is backed up and everything is, but the behavioral part of it is kind of where I think, and you guys know it, I'm guessing as well, like you get to meet people every day, and just making people actually do the stuff is part of the problem, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, you mean do the work? Or the greatest words in health coaching, show me that you're willing to take these necessary steps and get there. So I mean, Seamus and I have actually been talking about this in terms of like thoughts and ideas and topics and what to speak on a little bit more, given our experience now, whether it's like in podcast land and or in stages in the future. And it's really about solidifying the ability to get people to take action a bit more, right? And then also like how to modernize your approach in the coaching thing to actually get more action to get done. Because like you just said, like I feel like, again, AI is going to take a lot of jobs. We already know that. AI is going to be a facilitator of a lot of things. It's going to help disseminate information faster. It's going to be able to help look at you in this very unique lens and kind of give you these tailored things. But it almost can feel overwhelming and overloading to a human brain to try to conceptualize all these things trying to get done. And then they never get started because it's like, you need to put this out 100 things, right? And they never even look at like number one. You know what it reminds me of, Seamus? Remember, you get you as a human, you get a list of 100 things that you need to complete. The first action says, read all the instructions before doing any of the things. And people literally start doing number 2, number 3, number 4, right? And then they like just don't read through everything first. And then like, to me, it's like something along those lines where like we failed
it sounds like, you know, when you get your college, like the first semester or whatever, and like they give you all the things, and you're like, read these chapters, and they give you like the syllabus, and it's like, you're trying to do it, you're trying to go build a plane as you're flying already. It's like, no, build the plane first. And then
yeah, that analogy, right? Like, and I think too, like, because the information can be like, boom, like almost instantaneous nowadays with all these tools and things, that the human mind is like unwilling to accept the fact that it's literally looked at everything that exists on the internet essentially and then been able to like personalize it to you. I feel like it's just like you're in awe and disbelief with the fact that something like that can exist. And so again, then it takes like maybe a human approach to then take this like book on you and say, all right, cool, based on this, here's your week 1 goal, your one thing to get you stepping in the right direction with your longevity. And that's where Seamus and I step in, because ultimately we're like, look, we can talk about damn near everything for a long period of time, but what is the action step? What is it that's going to help you make a step in the right direction today? And this is actually like a perfect thing. So my patient today that came in, Seamus, he's like traveling, like international the next like 3 months. Ooh. Signed up for a program with us. Okay, cool. Like,
right. How's he gonna get some of his stuff out there?
Well, concierge medicine, bro.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, so he has some therapies already existing through a concierge service that was outside of ours, and then obviously starting with us. And so I broke it down. And I was like trying to get an evaluation and assessment of what's going on. And I literally said, all right, cool. We're going to get to the training when you get back from vacation in 3 months and after your travel. But the thing that I know that you can apply right now is the palms of protein based on your DEXA scan. That is it. I can send you the rest of the resources. You can get to it if you have some time to read, if you're just actually kind of chilling. But I was like, look at your hand. Like, boom, I need 6 of those a day. And, this individual is using a medication that kind of curbs appetite. All right, cool, right? I need you to still focus on this thing. I can care less if you're trying, like you just said, using an intermittent fasting strategy or all those things. Effectively, he's going after calorie restriction with GLP-1. But I was like, that is your goal for the first month. And month 2, you mentioned being on apparently, dude, he lives on a yacht cruise ship thing where he has like two weeks out of his next month and a month from now, where he's actually going to, he has access to a gym. I was like, cool, I will give you some plans to work out 2 days or 3, like a 3-day thing, in addition to the protein focus, right? Like literally these actionable things, to taking these things and bringing it down to like actionable things. Because, Seamus, actually, because we listed the different domains here. Do you mind sharing that image really quick? Sure. that you were reading it from?
Yeah, sure. Let me pull the image up again. I have it here.
And the reason why I'm bringing this up is like the image. So you listed all those things off. I was like, those are a lot of big words. Like, I feel dumb, and I know I'm not that dumb.
And I'm gonna share it.
Yeah, you gotta learn how to use technology faster. Share. Where's our AI agent? Well, your browser needs permission, bro. Goodness.
I know, right?
Goodness. All right, here, hold on. I'll share mine.
I got it.
Please stand by.
Our window, and I'm gonna just do this one. Perfect.
Whoa, the Matrix.
The Matrix right there. Yeah. All right, we're cool. So now we're here. This is the window. So the dysregulated nutrient sensing mitochondrial dysfunction, cellular senescence, dysbiosis. Is this Lior? Is this gut dysbiosis, or like? Can you explain the dysbiosis just real fast as I go through it?
Yeah, we do have changes. We do have changes throughout our lifetime of bacteria-wise and changes, and we are familiar with it, right? I mean, so and there are people are currently working on it, and eventually it's something that we set our goals to get as well, like the effect of the different microbiome kind of sequencing and
Yeah.
understanding and kind of and see how it might affect aging. Even though there are certain evidence, and we do know that this affects like nutrition and everything. And I know you guys had I think a few episodes ago, right? You had someone talking about microbiome and everything, right?
Yeah.
Dasha.
Dasha. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, she was, and she actually built an AI tool to like help coaches be able to give information more about those specific things and kind of like prompt symptomology in a sense to help give them a better kind of like use case scenario to help with like GI issues, which again, super fascinating, super useful tool. It's like every day another AI bot like pops up for like a specific thing now, even more so.
Yeah.
But
you
going back
to look at this, Marcos?
yeah. But going back to this, my original point here is like I look at this and I know most of these words. Okay, all right, like I said, but there's someone to like get this initially, right? Like it's like then like, hey, we're gonna step into like again for the order of like cellular senescence and talking about like this. You broke it down in such a like simple thing with like the zombie cell, like an oversimplification. I get that, but like boom, now I know what that means because I've actually never seen the word senescence in my life until today. So yet that's where your PhD is, right? I have seen dysbiosis, and that's where Seamus asked, like, is it gut specific or is it like skin related dysbiosis and other stuff there? But again, like to me, as a moderately educated individual, granted I didn't go to PhD, stuff like that, but it could be even this is overwhelming for me. Now, how do we apply this to the masses is my $1 million question, right? That's kind of like, again, I think it's nice that the tool can then probably break down those individual components of like, hey, here's what you need to understand. And then here's what you need to do. Like you said, here's how you be preventative as you get further along. And I wanted to show the image because we obviously talked about it, but then for people to be able to see it. So if you're not watching, go ahead and maybe like give it a peek at this timestamp. We're at like 41 minutes. So that we kind of see like the wheel of information that Seamus was saying and how all those things really do help play a role in like the score of longevity in a sense, right? But yeah, I mean, the senescence stuff was cool. What's another one of these 12 that we can like kind of give?
What's another one that you're like you like a lot? Yeah, like you obviously defended cellular senescence, but what are you also gun ho about? I mean, what else are you excited about on this? Or like you're really passionate about on this wheel as well. I'm gonna stop sharing about it.
That's fine. So I'll just mention those are all known. Those are literally called like the hallmarks of aging, right? So those are like all parameters that are known to change throughout our lifetime and kind of affect everything. And to your question, I think one of the things that we are trying to gain, I'll mention additional because obviously I'm a science nerd, and if you allow me to talk about science, I'll take it. It's fine.
We'll take it.
Exactly, it's fine. I'll talk about science. You don't have to make me. But I will mention that one of the things that we are working, as you said it, right? I mean, kind of want to make the individual work on a certain specific something, right? And you kind of want to choose the path of least resistance. Like you want to be able to talk to the individual, understand exactly what are those things that he will be able to actually achieve. Because what is the point of giving them recommendations that they never achieve? That they will feel like a failure, they will not do it, and it's like you lost everything basically.
Yeah,
so
exactly. There's no point. Yeah,
exactly. And that will elevate them. They could gain the best, like whatever they can gain out of it, and also will be like beneficial for them. So one of the things that we are currently working on, as you mentioned, like AIs, and we are called like longevity AI. So part of the thing that our AI is actually doing is exactly this: communicating with the customer and try to understand exactly what will cause them. So we give him like a list of actions that will benefit him the most, and kind of throughout this interaction, we can find whatever action will have the best effect on his risk factors, but on the other hand, with the highest chance for him to actually achieve it.
Ooh, I like that. Can we repeat that real quick, Lior? Like, it's taking all their data, and you're going to give a few action steps that are for their risk factors, but also with their behavior profile, the one that they're most likely going to adopt. So the one that's going to help them out the most with their health, but also the one that they're willing to take on.
Yeah, and it's more than that, right? So we have all of their like kind of medical records, right? So we can tell exactly if they had knees problem at any time. We probably won't recommend them to run, right? That makes no sense to kind of people with needs. Obese people will be less likely to start from running, right? So maybe gradually a bit, because we have all of their information, we can make this deduction, offer them exactly tailor-made suggestions. And as I kind of mentioned before, right, because we know certain certain kind of people have the tendency to be affected by certain suggestions, right? And not all individual affect exactly the same way. And we kind of know that, right? I mean, even through like eating certain things, like some people, when they eat, I don't know, ice cream, for instance, their insulin level goes way up, and some people not as much. And those differences is kind of what makes us different, right? And we need to understand where they originated from and how can we kind of use it to our own benefit, those differences. So it's exactly the same thing with interventions for aging. We need to understand the composition of the individual as its own, understand the persona and what interventions will benefit him the most. And this is exactly what our AI is doing. It's understanding kind of composite everything, both behavioral wise, scientific wise, and I can tell you even more than that. Even for instance, if somebody lives in an area which have like high, like very rainy, for instance, or very bad weather, we might not recommend to go outside and run. Even for that, to that extent, we can kind of composite everything together, and this is the benefit of an AI, right? Something that our human brain cannot comprehend. Kind of bring everything together and recommend you exactly the most best intervention that you will be most likely to actually do.
It's crazy because this is like a deterministic model of living. This goes into, so beyond health, beyond the like health metrics, like that's a philosophical question that these artificial models are learning from. It's almost like Minority Report. It's almost like any type of futuristic AI thing out there that like is a movie, but it's very true because if you're listening to this podcast, right, Marcos, so the folks like us, we've gone through so much education. We learned about exercise, we learned about nutrition, and we're trying to find the best thing. That's not the point. The point is to find the thing that works for you. So when they make this book about you, it's like these are the recommendations for you that's going to work best with your behavior, with your psychology, with your lifestyle right now. And obviously you have an app as well that integrates their wearables, and I've seen that back end. And it's important to note that because you can search for more knowledge, right? And be like, oh, these are the markers of aging and this is all that. But they may not even relate to you. So you're just wasting time. And I think sometimes Marcos was talking about the list of things to do. You got all these people talking about protocols and giving you the best list of things to do. It just kind of gets overwhelming when you go, hey, Seamus, or hey, Lior, hey, Marcos, we did all your stuff. Here's your top 3 you need to work on. And you'll be like, that's for me. That's tailored to me. And now it's not as overwhelming, kind of like we were talking about before. And it's crazy because now it's this objective marker, and now you're going to start living a little bit better.
Yeah, and I think more than that, it's just like a living, breathing machine, right? So it's update itself. Like this is the idea. So it kind of nourish from like information from your, whatever like watch you're wearing or your phone, whatever amount of steps you're doing a day, and everything. It kind of understands and develops throughout the time, and as you go, it like changes itself to kind of operate to your own benefit. It can tell if you walked or not. If it kind of suggests you to do more steps, and it can tell you're not doing the steps, it understands maybe steps is not the right thing for you. Sometimes you don't even have to say it. It can understand on its own, and from now on it might suggest do something completely different.
That's kind of insane. We have to talk to like Marcos. This is like, I know this is your background is in longevity, but we're gonna have to talk to like someone in the artificial intelligence science of it too. I think from the team of like going like, how does the machine learn that? Like, oh hey, this person hasn't gone on steps, and we told them to go on steps. They did a little bit, but it's like it's almost like a behavior coach, right, Marcos? Week to week, when you check in with the client, right, day to day, you're like, oh, these things are going well. What are you struggling with? And then, oh, we'll take out the things you're struggling with, or find ways to work around them. Because, like you said, it's the path of least resistance. And if that's what the AI model's on, like the path of least resistance to get you to your health goals, dang, that's a super smart, intelligent being for sure.
Yeah, I had a teacher, science teacher, chemistry, AP, senior year, and he was prepping us for the test, and he said, you got to take the low-level fruit. It's like you're at the tree, just get the fruit, right? The ones that are just down there first and foremost. And I think sometimes like to then be like, I just use this expensive, super sophisticated piece of software, that's like literally tailored to me, and it told me to do these first. Cool. Like you just said, it's like you gotta take the easy ones and build on those for sure. And it is interesting to note that it'll be like, oh yeah, like we thought walking was the best choice based on probability, right? But close second was this. The next thing is like, oh well, Lior likes to get into the pool and swim 3-4 days a week, and that's where he actually like makes up for it. Cool. Let's actually see if now like they'll walk at least this much, right? Which is really kind of what our little feeble human minds are doing, Seamus, right? When we're analyzing our patients and clients, kind of like output from an activity standpoint. And again, like I can say that I'm going to get them a number till I'm blue in the face, but like sometimes too, like I wonder as more AI kind of tools with training in a sense or lifestyle intervention, we'll give them like, hey, like today is a day to just like, we've noticed that Sundays are a day that you get a lot of walking in. Find the upper limit to your thing. What is your threshold? And I think like for me, like the challenge of getting to that place, and if there's a way for software or a program to be able to understand that and like also challenge the human, like it's gonna be sick. And again, the AI, integration into the wearables as well. Shoot, like I mean, now that Whoop has its newest iteration, right, where there is these new things going on with like assessing other, biometrics like blood pressure through how I don't know, but it's kind of like I'm genuinely fascinated to be like I want to like get a blood pressure cuff, get the new Whoop, and then like figure out like how to
the differences between them.
Yeah, just I mean the Delta's one thing, but just like, oh man, like is that change the game again? Because before we were thinking, yeah, we can get like heart rate and pulse ox and whatever the the actual red light thing. Yeah, HRV, all those things that like kind of come from it. Yeah, but then to get like a step like that where again so many people are worried about that. I think isn't it though that and I mean a statin drug are probably the most commonly prescribed ones, like blood pressure and statins, right?
Yeah.
So to be the ability to monitor that and the physicians to like tweak the dose and individualize that even further based off of a wearable. Like, dude, have you actually sat and thought about like how much that really changes the game if it does it?
That changes the game so much, Marcos, and I think Lior can speak about this more. But it's like it comes back to technology and trackability and all this. Instead of you do an annual with your doc, they gave you a medication, and now you're just stuck with medication for a year. Well, what if things change? Day to day, week to week. What if in a month you could have lowered your dose as opposed to waiting a whole year? Now you're dealing with the side effects with these things and taking these medications being more in real time and having, like we said, Lior, like the software being a co-pilot to the doc to update you and be like, oh yeah, hey, by the way, like your behavior changed, things went well. We don't have to wait until next year to do that. We can adjust now. And I think that's pretty powerful stuff.
And it also allows, first of all, it can also allow to your doctor, right? So if some of this, like whatever, physiological changes throughout the time, so it kind of allows the doctor. And on the other hand, the doctors always have an accessibility to this kind of information. So it kind of connects, all the different parts of like whatever health system that you're currently using and kind of helps you benefit from everything together. And also it gives you life trends, which I think is missing, right? I mean, we have all of those bits and information throughout our lifetime. We do blood tests and whatever, but one place to kind of bring them all together and can see the trend throughout our lifetime and who we are as an individuals and understand. Because even now we understand you have a certain thresholds for blood tests, right? But different individuals will have different standards, right? And if we can see the trend and kind of compare it to our old self, we can see the changes if we benefit from it or not. Most research has been done on a population level, whatever standard they have in their own like local facilities, like physician facilities, and it's a problem. Like we now understand that we are all, and you kind of mentioned it at the beginning, we're all a specific individual and we look different and we behave different, and 270 years old are not the same, and we need to understand it. As the fastest we understand it, we'll be able to achieve better treatments, better everything basically. We are different, we should accept it and understand it and kind of use it for our own benefits, and this is exactly what we're working on, like understanding the trends over time and kind of understand who is the individual, who is the specific persona, and what can we do to make him, what will be the best intervention for him.
I have a theoretical question here. Do we get to the point where we actually don't have to actually pull blood to monitor it? That they actually have a little sensor similar to like a blood marker?
I think this is, it's a whole other thing, but eventually I believe we will. Technology is advancing in a rapid pace, and it's like probably the day is not that far away. So.
There's CGMs, and then I heard something about like not CGMs, but about cortisol. But I don't know if that's real. Like other markers that are like in real time That'd be really interesting.
Cortisol is one of the hardest one to kind of measure. If we'll have that, it'll be crazy, I believe. But yeah.
Yeah. I can
Dude,
only
Marcos, knowing your labs any moment of the day, that would be insane.
Yeah, because then you're able to actually assess like daily trends because this device is monitoring it at that level, and then we have a whole new. It's like a whole new like field essentially because it's like we've only ever really kind of looked at things in acute sense, like snapshot in time at this thing we drew this much blood, but now imagine that you have like I mean CGM's changed the game. We know how foods when they're paired together versus eaten separately affect individuals, right? And you could be like, hey, like if I eat a I'm going to use the one that I know, like for one of my clients, she's like, I ate a red vine. This might be like 200, but like, I wonder if she ate a red vine with like a piece of steak, like did it do the same? Like, again, like you wouldn't think to like pair these things together, but that's where I think the new frontier would then be like, oh, great. Everything we knew before has just been like turned up on its head a little bit. It's because we now have quote a wearable, and I think the wearable market, maybe it's funny to think that like, I know Apple wasn't the first one into it, but who was like really the first like wearable thing that was tracking? Was it Garmin? Probably.
Yeah, probably Garmin.
Polar Garmin, like the things that would like give you feedback from that. But like, who would have thought that like something like on your wrist would one day be such a versatile piece? I mean, we haven't even got to actually. The guy's dodging us, Seamus. We didn't get to talk to the guy that's using wearables that like assess your actual output and workouts. So
yeah, we gotta get him on, but you know what? This is kind of on the same track. I was going to ask this question, but we're coming up on an hour, so Lior, I want to kind of finalize it here. But what excites you about this field of longevity and artificial intelligence, longevity AI? What is exciting you personally, and then like what excites you in your work that we're doing with longevity AI?
Honestly, hopefully it's the impact. Just the understanding that we can prevent people from having the disease. I'm not just like living better for a better future. Understanding that we're not getting younger. I'm not lying to anyone. I mean, I used to have much more hair on my head. I'm not getting any younger these days. So I know that like for myself, for my future, for everyone, I just want to be able to age in peace and kind of keep my health throughout the ages. And this is kind of what propels me further, just the understanding of the biology behind it and the idea that we can and should prevent it and what is the best way to do it. And this is kind of what propels me forward.
Man, there you go. I think that's it, guys. I think we did a great job for discussing, I mean, really just one piece on that. What did you call it? What is it called again? The 12
hallmarks of aging.
Hallmarks of aging.
Hallmarks of aging. All right, cool. 1 of 12. It's like an hour of conversation, and we didn't really dive into it at a PhD
He had
level.
a PhD in this, guys. He spent like years doing this.
So I think it's safe to say, let the experts be able to be the experts and put their love and passion into the project that would then allow you to get the most out of it. Again, I feel like me now knowing a bit more of it, because Seamus, I know you get a little bit deeper dive with the crew over here because of what the partnership looks like. But I mean, it's super fascinating. This got me thinking in a whole nother light and lens, and I hope other people got a lot out of this too, to think about like the senescent cells, the ability to really how those things can be impactors, and how you've witnessed it anecdotally in your, labs, which is really cool. I really appreciate you sharing that story. I'm sure you got a lot more, and love just to connect outside of this too, just to hear more about the stuff that you got to dive into. Because the science nerd in me is like, damn it, I never got to really do a cool lab. I got an A- in a physics lab once, and I said no more labs.
Was that the one where you have to like do this one, and like the physics lab where you have to do a bunch of things like with like waves?
I don't know, but my GA gave me an A-, and I hate that guy because it was the first bad mark I had for 12 years. It blemished my perfect record, but I actually owe him one because I quickly learned that like I don't need to be perfect at everything. I need to just be willing to learn, and other people that are more passionate than me in particular areas, just let them tell me what it is I need to know about this stuff. And hopefully this hour for everybody else was like that, because hey, every time you show up to here, it's like practically a quick little mini masterclass of information for people. We try to get a high level overview of niche, whatever, however you pronounce that damn word. And Lior, dude, thank you again. This was super fascinating, and I hope more people can come to you with great questions in the future. And as Seamus mentioned, as he works on this particular project with the Longevity AI crew, we're just merely a vessel to try to help support a great company that's trying to like really be able to give information and a place for like that one-stop shop to get your information about how your health is actually doing. And I think, like you just said, so many people have these piecemealed ideas of this portal, that portal, this portal, and like to be able to then put it all together And to be able to truly kind of get an assessment on your health, I think is revolutionary. And I can't wait to see what takes you guys in the next 3 to 5 years. Hell, it's AI. It's probably in the next year. Fuck it.
Tomorrow probably. But thank you guys for having me. It was a blast. It was like super interesting.
Awesome. Yeah, Lior, thanks so much. And guys, by the way, Lior did this at like 2 a.m. It's 3 a.m. for him now. So we really appreciate it. This guy's working hard and he's pushing hard. So we really appreciate him for coming out. But all right, guys, we'll see you on the next one. Peace.
Bye.